In today's episode, I'm going to answer a question I get often from both new teachers and teachers new to preschool and pre-K. And that question is, how do you write lesson plans? Now, the method that I'm going to share with you today works for all early childhood educators. It doesn't matter if you have a required curriculum to teach or not. This simple 6-step method will work for all early childhood classrooms. You see, when I was a brand new teacher, I spent so much time writing my lesson plans each week. And yet, it seemed like I was reinventing the wheel every Sunday night. There was so much to cover. I didn't know what to teach or when to teach it. I was the only teacher in my grade level, and I didn't have anybody I could turn to for help. I just wished that somebody would give me a roadmap to follow. And those pretty plans that I spent so much time writing, yeah, they were rarely followed. And yes, I had a degree in early childhood education, but writing your own lesson plans from scratch is so different than writing them for a professor when you're a student teacher. Slowly, through trial and error over time, I developed a formula for writing my lesson plans that really works. And that is what I want to share with you today. I'm going to walk you step by step through this simple process. And by the end of our time together, you'll be able to write your plans with ease. So first things first, I'm going to get out my assessment data that I've gathered, and I'm going to use that data to decide which activities, which groups of students need this week. Next up, I'm going to get out my curriculum pacing guide or curriculum map. Now, if you don't have one, don't worry, because I'm going to tell you how to get a free one at the end of this episode. So keep listening and watching. Now that I've got my curriculum map out, I'm going to flip it to the page that shows the week that I'll be planning for. And here inside the curriculum map, it lists the small group literacy and math activities I have to choose from, as well as the science activities, the books that I might consider reading aloud. Now I'm going to flip it to the corresponding literacy, math, and science objectives that I'll be working on. Now it's time to get out my lesson plan book. I keep it in the second drawer here of my 10-drawer rolling cart. This keeps clutter off my desk, and it makes it easily accessible for me whenever I need it. Now it's time to actually write my lesson plans. And for those of you who are watching, I've opened up my electronic lesson plan template here on the screen. And what I love about this is that I can put the things in here that happen every single week. So some parts of the lesson plan, like lunch and recess and snack and all of that, they're always there. The days, the times, everything, they're all editable. So I can change them at any time, but I don't have to type them again and again or write them by hand again and again. And now I can just go in and put in my books and my activities, and I can even make notes here on the right-hand side. So I love doing my lesson plans this way. It saves me tons of time. Now for the fun part. It's time to start prepping those activities I'll be using to teach my lessons next week. If you're watching along here on the screen, I'm printing out some visual discrimination activities that I'll be using in small groups. Now that I finished printing, I'm going to go ahead and gather the books that I'll be reading each day next week. Now you can use one of our book lists, or you can use whatever books you have available to you. Now that I've printed and prepped all of my activities, it's time to put them into these trays. I keep these trays in that rolling 10-drawer cart. And once I have everything prepped and put into my trays, I am good to go. Okay, so after I typed out my lesson plans, I printed them out. And now I'm going to punch them with my Happy Planner. Ignore the punch that's already there. I punched them on the wrong side. Oops. So some of you might not have to print out your lesson plans, but if you do, this is how I like to do it. And this is my Create 365 Happy Planner punch. So I can put these right into my Happy Planner. So once I have printed my lesson plans and punched them, now I'm going to open my lesson planner and pop them in just like so. There we go. And now I can leave my lesson plan open on my desk if that's something your principal requires. But I really love the Happy Planner rings and using the Happy Planner punch. Okay, I know you probably have questions. First up, what if you don't have any assessments? So chances are if you're in a public program, you have assessments for your assessments. So you're probably good to go. But if you're in a situation where you don't have any, you can find our paper assessments in our Pre-K Pages shop. Those are the old school type. You just print them out and you can assess your kids with them. They still work just fine. If you want to kick it up a notch and bring your teaching into the 21st century, you can check out ESGI. We'll put a link in the show notes. It's online digital assessments. Next up, you might be wondering how on earth you know what skills and objectives you should be teaching each week, right? No worries, we've got your back because at Pre-K Pages, we have our free Trailblazer curriculum map. So all you have to do is download it. There is a link in the show notes if you're watching. And if you're listening, go to Pre-K Pages and type Trailblazer in the search box, and you'll be able to grab your free copy of the 70+ page Teaching Trailblazer curriculum map. And that will give you the skills and objectives for each week. So we have it broken down by weeks, and then there's also a section where it lists the skills and objectives for each week. So you can take a peek at that, and that's a freebie. What if you don't know what units of study to focus on, right? So for the year, you're wondering what units of study are you working on? Now, some of you might be in programs where the children come up with the units of study, but chances are if you're in a public program, you don't have that luxury, right? So you can use the curriculum map one more time. You can take a peek in there and find the units of study that go along with our curriculum. You can take a peek at those if you want. You can grab them in our store if you like them, or you can just use the idea of the different units and create your own. And if you don't have a lesson plan book, I know a lot of you looked at that lesson plan book and you were drooling over that. That's okay, because that's another freebie we have for you at Pre-K Pages. If you're watching, we'll put a link to that freebie lesson plan book in the show notes. If you're listening, go to prekpages.com and type lesson planner or teacher planner into the search box to find that freebie. Another question I get asked quite often is, what books do I read for each unit of study, right? Well, that's another thing that we also have for you at Pre-K Pages. We have more than 50 book lists. They're all age-appropriate book lists for children ages 3 to 5, and they're listed in your Trailblazer curriculum map. So when I opened up the curriculum map and I showed you week 9 and I showed you the units of study, there was also a link in there to the book list. So you can look at that book list. You can take it to your library. You can save it on your phone, take it to your library, look for those books. And that way, you know, they've been vetted by a veteran. That's me. And they're going to be age appropriate for your kids. Of course, you're still going to want to look at each one to make sure they're appropriate for your kids, because your kids aren't my kids. And if you're wondering where you can get a lesson plan template, so you just have to type your info in and save it, and then save as each week, right, to save tons of time. You're not still writing your lesson plans by hand, are you? I hope not. But if you are, I invite you into the 21st century, and you can find the editable lesson plan template in our Pre-K Pages shop. We'll also link that in the show notes for you as well. So what I really like about this simple 6-step method for lesson planning is that I got my Sunday nights back. Once I started implementing this method, I no longer dreaded Sunday nights every week. I had my Sundays back for myself and for my family. And in case you're wondering how on earth I got all this done before I left on Friday, here is how I did it. So Tuesdays, and I didn't do it on Mondays because Mondays was always for parent communication. I always did all my parent communication stuff for the week on Mondays. That's just me, you do you. But on Tuesdays, I identified the unit of study and the learning objectives that I would be teaching that week. And to do that, in this particular podcast episode, you saw me using the Trailblazer curriculum map. So that's what I used. I would open it up. I would look for the objectives and the units of study. I would identify which ones I was going to be doing that week and look at those objectives in there. So simple, quick, easy on Tuesdays. On Wednesdays, I would physically write the plans. So I would open up my computer and I would write my lesson plans on Wednesdays. On Thursdays, I gathered all the books and the materials that I would need to carry out those lesson plans the next week. And on Friday, I prepped the activities. So there might have been a little bit of laminating and cutting or prepping that happened the other days, but that's the general sequence of how I did it so that I could walk out the door on Friday after school and not stay super late. When I started implementing this approach to lesson planning, it saved me so much time and stress, and it helped me feel more prepared for the upcoming week. And when I felt less stressed and more prepared, more learning happened, right? Because kids can pick up on that. I no longer felt like I was drowning. Now, I have a surprise for you. There is a printable that goes along with this episode. So I put everything that I talked about in this episode into a free printable for you. So I've listed each of the steps, and there's a brief summary of each step on the first 2 pages. And on the 3rd page, I tried to address the most frequently asked questions that I get about lesson planning. So if you're listening, you can find this at Pre-K Pages. Go to prekpages.com and type how to write lesson plans in the search box. And if you're watching along on YouTube, go to the show notes and we'll put a link to that for you there. Now, if you're watching along on YouTube and you're wondering where in the world are those show notes that I keep talking about, then I have a quick tutorial for you here on the screen. It seems that many of our viewers on YouTube, when they're on mobile devices, have a very difficult time finding the show notes. So here on the screen, there is a little tutorial that will show you exactly how to find those show notes with clickable links to everything that I mentioned in this episode. So I hope all of that information helps you feel less stressed and more prepared. Until next time, I'm Vanessa Levin. Onward and upward.